Welcome everybody, thank you for joining us. I hope this Wednesday is finding you well. We're going to get into the scriptures here in a minute for our normal service. I just wanted to share a couple of things with you by way of information. First of all, for those of you who have been mailing in your tithes and offerings, thank you so much for that. When me and Rachel first visited this church in May 2016, we knew that you loved the Lord and you loved your church, and that has certainly been borne out by your offerings over the last couple of weeks. So very thankful for you, very thankful to be your pastor. Do keep praying for Margaret Poston. Miss Margaret has had some good days recently. She was actually up out of the bed and sitting in a chair, had done some walking yesterday, which is a big improvement. If she stays on that track, she'll be headed to rehab from St Mary's fairly soon. So do keep Miss Margaret in your prayers. Keep praying for Natalia Lichty. She is on target to start chemo on the 14th, which is the middle of next week. So do keep her and Tom in your prayers as well, as they obviously go through what's quite a challenging thing, a very challenging thing normally, but under these circumstances even more so. This coming Monday, April the 13th, will be a church-wide day of prayer for us as a church. Now, I wish we could gather here and pray, but obviously for a couple of reasons we can't do that. So I'm asking you to take 15 minutes out of your day on Monday and pray. Pray for our church, pray for our communities, pray for our leaders, pray for people to get well, pray for infection rates and death rates to slow down. However the Lord leads you to pray, I would like each of us to take 15 minutes on Monday and pray. To help us kind of organise this a little bit, there is a sign-up sheet available online. The link to that is currently on our Facebook page. It should be near the top. Once this video gets posted, it will probably be just under the video, and I'll try and put a link with the video on YouTube as well. So sign up for 15 minutes, you click that link, it takes you straight to the sign up page. I set it up so you know it can't be that complicated. Sign up for 15 minutes and we will have a day praying together, asking for God to work. I'm looking forward to that. Why don't we pray together before we open the scriptures? Let's go to the Lord together and ask him to bless our time in the word this morning. Father, you are our good God, our kind God, our loving God, our giving God. Father, we're thankful that every day we know that you love us because you've sent your Son to die on the cross for us. Jesus, thank you that you came. Thank you that you came to bear our sin. Thank you that you came to pay our penalty. Thank you that you came to defeat death. And this Sunday we'll be celebrating that on Easter. Holy Spirit, thank you that you proceed from the Father and from the Son. Thank you that you live in our hearts, weaning our hearts off love for the world and onto our love for you. Good God, we ask that you would help us now in this time as we look at the scriptures. Help us to hear, help us to apply, help us to live for your glory. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Romans 13 is our destination this morning. Romans 13, we're going to read the first 5 verses. Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 5 has become very relevant to our situation in the last month. It talks about the responsibility that Christians have to obey civil government. It talks about the rights of civil government, the rights of Christians. So this isn't going to be sort of a normal message. Normally we take a few verses or a few paragraphs and we just work through them systematically and then try to apply them. We're going to read these 5 verses, take sort of a bird's eye view of what Paul is teaching us in them. I hope that bird's eye view will encourage you to sit down later on this afternoon with an open Bible and a pen and a piece of paper and ask God the Spirit to convince you of these things in your own conscience. But then after we've kind of taken a quick bird's eye view of Romans 13, 1 through 5, we're going to think about specifically what it means to us in Virginia, specifically what it means to us as First Free Will Baptist Church. So I hope this time answers some questions for you. I hope this time addresses some concerns for you. I hope this time helps you to see where I am, where my conscience is, what the things about my heart is convinced of, so that we all know why we're doing what we're doing, why we're not doing what we're not doing, and the direction that I believe the Lord is leading us. So, let's look together Romans 13, verses 1 through 5. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God, and the powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister to thee, he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. So Romans 13, 1 through 5 teaches us some things we need to know, and it tells us some things we need to think about. John MacArthur, great preacher and pastor and Bible commentator John MacArthur, says this: every Christian, no matter what form of government he lives under, is under command from the Lord to maintain proper and useful submission to that government for the sake of leading a peaceful life and having an effective witness. Now that's a real mouthful, so let me say that again. Every Christian, no matter what form of government he lives under, is under command from the Lord to maintain proper and useful submission to that government for the purpose of, so that he can lead a peaceful life and have an effective witness. Look again there at verse 1. Verse 1 tells us, let every soul be subject to the higher powers. There's no condition, right? There's no qualification. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. Don't just pay the taxes you agree with. Don't just follow the laws you like. Do all of them. Don't just be a good subject when you like whoever's in charge. Don't rebel against guys you don't like. No, Paul says, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. The second half of verse 1 tells us that government is by divine decree. Government is God's idea and God's in control of it. Look at the second half of verse 1 with me again. For there is no power but of God. All power belongs to God. God made the sunrise, God made the sunset. God decides who wins each election according to his purposes. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Just because the guy you don't like won the recent election doesn't mean that God's out of control. It means that God is very much in control. God calls Nebuchadnezzar, one of the worst kings of the Old Testament, Nebuchadnezzar, my servant. One of the Psalms in Isaiah speaks of King Cyrus as the anointed of the Lord. Cyrus was a foreign king. The powers that be are ordained of God. So that means that resistance to government is rebellion to God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God. So when we resist the good laws that our government gives us, when we resist the common sense laws that our government gives us, what are we doing? Well, we're in rebellion against God. Because God has ordained the government, and these governments give us good laws. And because of that, those who resist will be punished. Look at the next part of verse 2. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Listen, we ought to thank God we live in a society where, broadly speaking, wrongdoing is punished. We ought to thank God that we live in a society with laws that are enforced. We ought to thank God that we don't live in a corrupt society. We ought to thank God that, broadly speaking, we can trust our mayors, our governors, our presidents, our boards of supervisors. Never sure what the boards of supervisors do, but they have them in Henrico County, so I thought I'd throw them in there. But those who resist will be punished. Why? Listen, don't you love the logic of the Apostle Paul? I love spending time with Paul because this man was a poet and yet logical at the same time, eloquent and systematic. Those who resist will be punished. Why? Because, verse 3, government exists to restrain evil. Look at the start of verse 3. Rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Right? Why does God create government? To be a terror to evil. Why does God create government? God creates government to resist, to restrain, to hold back evil, to hold back sin. Good government is a gift from God that provides a breakwater, a defence against the sins of our hearts. Sometimes I like to believe in this libertarian anarchist's dream where we have no system, we have no form, we have no government and everyone gets along just fine. That's a lie. If you have ever thought that, you need to explore and understand what the scriptures teach about human nature. We need government to restrain evil. The other side of that coin follows at the end of verses 3 and the beginning of verse 4. Just as government exists to resist evil, so government exists to promote good. Do that which is good, and thou shalt have the praise of the same. For he is a minister of God to thee for good. He is a minister of God to thee for good. The magistrate, the mayor, the governor, the president, whoever he or she may be, is a servant of God for your good. Government exists to promote good. Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. Live as a faithful, law-abiding citizen, and you shall have the praise of the government. That's what Paul is telling us. Again, Paul tells us at the end of verse 4, government exists to inflict punishment for disobedience. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For again, Paul wants us to get this in verse 4. For the second time he says, he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Church, aren't you glad that God has given us a system of government that promotes good and punishes disobedience? Man, we ought to thank God for that. We ought to thank God that he has been kind in the depths of his wisdom, in the depths of eternity past, to conceive of human government, to punish the evil, to promote good, to restrain our wickedness. And it's the Christian's job to obey for the sake of our conscience. Look at verse 5. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. Now, when I was a youth pastor at our Christian school, very occasionally we'd have sort of special meetings either with the whole school body, with everyone in high school or middle school or elementary school, or just with the guys, or just with the girls, or just with the 6th grade or whatever. Very occasionally we'd have special meetings just with a particular group of kids. And the question those kids would always ask me was, are we in trouble? And my reply was always, should you be in trouble? Now, of course, if you're in middle school, the answer is always yes, right? But see what I'm saying? See what Paul is saying? Listen, obey the laws for the good of your conscience. So you're not always looking over your shoulder. So there's not always a dark shadow over your heart because you are disobeying the God-given, God-placed, God-representing civil government. So we look at verse 1 and we see there's no qualification or condition. And I know, as I've been hitting these points quickly, qualifications and conditions have been coming up in your mind, in your heart. Same for me. Part of that is because we're sinners, right? We hate authority. God tells us, eat of any tree in the garden apart from that one, and that's the one we go to. Right? We hate authority. So as soon as we're told to obey authority, our hearts and our minds go, what about this, or what about this, or what about this? But that's not the only reason. There are some times, of course, when Christians should disobey civil governments, but those times are few and far between, and we don't live in one of those times at the moment. This is not one of those times. The times when believers by conscience must disobey civil government are few and far between and obvious, and we're not in one of those. What is Paul trying to teach us in these 5 verses? Well, among other things, perhaps this: the exercise of our personal, political, economic freedom in this life is not the most important thing. The exercise of your personal freedom is not the most important thing for a Christian. The exercise of your political freedom is not the most important thing for a Christian. The exercise of your economic freedom is not the most important thing for a Christian. We don't have all our hope in this world. In fact, sometimes we don't have any hope in this world. We trust our civil government, but we're sceptical about our civil government. We trust our civil government because God has given them to us. But we're sceptical about our civil government because even the best president, even the best governor, even the best mayor, handing down the best laws cannot change the heart. And our trouble is in our hearts. So we trust our government as an institution given to us by God and ordained and ordered by God, but we're cynical about the amount of good that a government can do. This is perhaps the biggest difference between those who believe the Bible and those who don't. Those who don't believe the Bible are always looking to government for answers, always looking for new laws and different strategies to solve our problems. Those of us who trust the Bible, we know, man, they're going to do their best, but there's only so much they can do. And the exercise of our personal, political and economic freedom just isn't the most important thing. In 50 billion years, it won't matter whether you lived in a democracy or under a dictatorship. It won't matter in 1,000 years whether presidents and mayors and governors were making right decisions in 2020 or not. It just won't be important. Between the hours of 9 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, from 97 to 2003, I obeyed the rules of my high school. Now, I know you're thinking 97 to 2003 is more than 4 years, right? It's because in England, high school is middle school and high school all rolled together. I mean, didn't take me 6 years to get through high school. Just want to say that on the camera, right? I obeyed those rules, even if I didn't agree with them, because that wasn't the most important thing. At that time, my personal freedom was less important than something else. In heaven, we'll have all the personal freedom we can imagine. But right now, freedom is less important for us. As Christians, we know we can lose a year. We can lose a son. We can lose a month. Because there's nothing that we're going to lose that God is not going to give us back. So what can civil government do in the life of a church? And what can civil government not do in the life of a church? Well, civil government cannot tell a local church what to do within its walls. Civil government cannot tell us how long our church services should be, cannot tell us what sort of music we should sing, cannot tell us how many songs to sing, cannot tell us what to preach or how long to preach. The civil government cannot single out a church or churches for special attention. What I mean is this: if it was just churches closing and every other business was open, the malls were packed, the schools were open, if everything else was functioning as normal, but just the churches were closed, then we'd probably ignore that. Because that seems to be an overstep into the life of the local church. And I know what you're thinking. Listen, I know your problem is that, man, Planned Parenthood is still open. Why Planned Parenthood clinics open, but churches are closed. That's a problem. Yeah, but that's always a problem. It's always a problem that there are Planned Parenthood clinics open. It's always a problem that last year over 6,000 children were killed in the city of Richmond by Planned Parenthood. That's always a problem. That's not a new problem. But, preacher, why are the ABC stores open and churches are closed? Isn't that a problem? Yeah, again, that's always a problem. That's always a problem. What about Walmart? How come Walmart's open and the churches are closed? Well, listen, churches can't control pastors can't control what happens in Walmart. But we can obey God for what happens in our church. So the civil government cannot tell a church what to do inside its walls. But the civil government, it seems to me, is absolutely within its rights to do what's being done today, to shut down large gatherings of people for the public good. And I'm convinced in my heart, and I believe that Governor Northam and President Trump are convinced in their hearts that this is for the public good. They're doing their job according to Romans 13:4. He is a minister of God to thee for good. And in my heart, I believe this is good. And in their hearts, I believe that they think this is good. In this case, obedience to God is obedience to the civil government. Outbreak clusters of the virus have been traced back to churches in at least 2 states. In Louisiana, one of the big outbreaks there can be traced back to a church. In Texas, one of the big outbreaks there can be traced back to a church. In South Korea, the whole country had its outbreak more or less under control until they had 30 cases, and then the 31st case was diagnosed with the virus, went to church, went to lunch, went to the mall, and the thing exploded. What do we want to do? Man, we want to go to church. We want to go to lunch. Some of you want to go to the mall, although I don't understand that part of it. But the good and right thing to do at this time, in this season, is to obey the civil governments. I am convinced that the ban on public gatherings is to prevent the spread of the virus, not to prevent the spread of the gospel. This is not Acts 5. In Acts 5, the Jewish leaders tried to shut the church down in Jerusalem, and Peter and John said, hey, we've got to listen to God, not to you. We're just going to keep on going. But I don't think we're in Acts 5. I don't think the church's closing is an effort to prevent the spread of the gospel in Virginia. I do think the church's closing is an effort to prevent the spread of the virus in Virginia. If I thought that these rules were aimed at preventing the spread of the gospel, man, we'd have church every day. We'd just leave these doors unlocked up, be up there every day until they came to get me, right? But that's not where we are. That's not where we are. It seems to me that we are well within the realm of Romans 13. That right now, in the middle of April 2020, we are right in Romans 13:4. He is a minister of God to thee for good. So what does it mean for us as our church? Well, I want to remind you, first of all, that 2 things. First of all, the Free Will Baptists believe in the autonomy of the local church. What does that mean? It means that pastors of local churches, along with their deacons' boards, make decisions that are best for their local church. It means within our denomination, there's no central body telling pastors what to do. Now, there is great advice from our denominational heads and our denominational boards. I'm thankful for it. But we believe in the autonomy of the local church. The second thing I want to say is kind of, I guess, linked to the first thing. Because we believe in the autonomy of the local church, because every local church is different, what this local church over here does will not look like what this local church over here does. At this time, we're going to do what's best for this church. And we're going to deal with this situation in a way that's best for this church. It means maybe we'll do some things that That church on Facebook isn't doing, maybe we won't do some things that church on Facebook is doing. But my responsibility is to pastor this church, not to try to imitate every other church. Church, you know we are a great church, but we're a unique church. There are lots of things that are true about this church that aren't true about a lot of other churches, particularly churches our size. And I hope in this season as a church we feel like we're losing something. I hope in this season as a church we feel like we're missing something. Because we are missing something. We're missing each other. The church is not just the building, but it's not less than the gathering. The church is not just the building. We can be Christians outside this building. In fact, we've got to be. But the church is not less than the gathering. So when we're not gathered, we are, in a very real and very costly sense, not the church. I'm not the church when I sit in my office. And I feel that I'm in this building every day, but it's not a church until the people gather. So I hope you feel like you're losing something. I hope you feel like you're missing something, because you are. You are. This is why we're not trying to replicate our normal service with these videos. This is why this is a very... Wednesdays is about the same, I guess. But this is why particularly Sunday mornings is very... looks different, is stripped down. This is why we're not filming one video for one service, because I want us to learn that we're losing something, that we are missing something. This is why this is one of the reasons that we're not live streaming our services. Because I don't want you to get in the habit of waking up late on a Sunday morning, getting a bowl of cereal, sitting on the church and watching TV and thinking that you're part of the church. You're not. You're just not. And again, this isn't a criticism of churches that are doing things that we're not, but this is how I see this situation for the good of this church. It's going to be painful not to have communion on Easter Sunday. Man, it's going to be painful not to gather for church on Easter Sunday. And there are ways around that, I know. But some things are too precious to rush. Some things are too precious to rush. I want our first service back together to be as overwhelmingly joyful as it can be. That Sunday is too precious to rush and fudge things together before we're ready. Paul's letters to the churches were the technology of the day. Right? Paul's letters to the churches were the technology of the day. They were the technology of the day that allowed Paul to gather remotely with those churches. They were the technology of the day that allowed Paul to teach those churches remotely. He could teach the church in Ephesus and Philippi and Colossae when he was in jail in Rome, right? Those letters were the technology of the day that allowed Paul to do more or less what I'm doing now, teaching remotely, right? But in every letter, you feel the desire of Paul's heart is to physically be with these churches. He knew that he was missing something, and I hope that we know the same. One of the things I'm praying for our church in this time is that we would not be hitting the pause button, but that we would be hitting the reset button. One of the things I'm praying for you and for your families at this time is that we would not be hitting the pause button, but that we would be hitting the reset button. When something breaks, a machine breaks or doesn't do what we want it to do, what's the first thing you do to it? Well, you turn it off and you turn it on again. That's the limit of my technical knowledge, right? If something goes wrong in our house, I turn it off and turn it on again. And if that doesn't work, I call Rachel. Right? That's what we do. If something's broken, we don't pause it, we reset it. So I hope that this is a reset for you spiritually. I hope the Lord is using this time to pull you out of some of the bad habits that you have found yourself in. We dig ourselves into our habits and they become comfortable grooves and ruts in our life, and hopefully the Lord is pulling us out of those. So let's hit reset. Let's not hit pause. Let's find new strength in the Scriptures. Let's go to this book each morning hungry to meet with God, hungry for something to get us through the day. Let's find new depths in prayer. Let's linger in prayer like Joshua did in the tent. Let's spend more time with God, meeting with God and enjoying His presence. Let's find new joy in service. Friend, listen, there's lots of things that we can't do because we can't gather as a church, but there are lots of things we can do. You can still love your neighbour. And man, some of you, all of you, but so many of you that I've spoken to over the last few weeks are loving your neighbour through this. But I hope you're finding new joy in that service. I hope you're finding joy in the ways that we can express our faith outside of this building. I hope you're finding new hope for the future. We're told all of a sudden that the future's uncertain. Well, the future's always been uncertain. The future's always been uncertain. But I hope your hope now is not that things will probably keep going the way they always have been, but that God is always the same God He always has been. I hope that you're finding hope. And I hope that I'm finding hope in the truth that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. I hope that when we come back together and we're able to gather again, that we won't take these things for granted. I hope that more of us will be here for Sunday school. I hope that more of us will come back on Sunday nights. I hope that fewer of us will rush in at 1 minute to 11 and rush out at 1 minute past 12. I hope that in this time God will teach us how valuable the physical gathering of the saints is, and how we should love it and treasure it and cherish it. I want to close by suggesting this. Maybe this whole season is a parable for life. Maybe this whole season is a parable for life. What do I mean? I mean, we spend each week longing to get back to church, right? If we're spiritually healthy, the desire of our hearts through the week is to get to Sunday morning to worship God again with our brothers and sisters. We spend, if you like, a week in the wilderness to get back to the promised land of church. We spend our lives in the wilderness to get back to the promised land of, or to get into the promised land of being with the Lord Jesus. So every week is a picture of our life, right? Every 7-day period is a picture of our life. We spend our weeks wanting to get back to church. We spend our lives wanting to get to Jesus because we want to worship Jesus on Sunday in church. We want to worship Jesus forever in heaven with the saints from across time and space. Every week is a parable for the Christian life. So maybe this is just an extended parable. Man, we're in the wilderness right now. And it's okay to admit that. We're in the wilderness right now, like the children of Israel in Exodus. And we're trusting God. And we're holding on. And we know that eventually God will bring us back together. Just as sure as they knew that eventually they will cross the Jordan into the promised land, just as sure as we know that eventually we will cross that heavenly Jordan into that heavenly promised land, so we know as we wander through this wilderness, God will bring us back together. God will bring us back together. Maybe that's one thing He's trying to teach us through this, that our whole lives are a season of patient waiting for us to be with Jesus. This is a season of patient waiting for us to be back together. Let's not waste it. But let's ask God to teach us. Let's ask God to use us. And let's ask God that we would all be spiritually more mature when we gather together again than we were when we separated. If we do that, surely we will not have wasted this difficult season. Let's pray together. Let's pray together as we close. God our Father, we're thankful for your word that speaks to us and teaches us and guides us in each difficult and surprising situation. Lord, I pray that this morning would be helpful. Lord, I pray this morning would be challenging. Lord, I know how Romans 13 challenges my own thinking and my own heart. Lord, use this time, please, in our lives to draw us closer to you, to draw us closer to each other, that we might be a stronger and healthier church when we come back together. God be with us, we pray. Heal the sick in our church, we ask. Be with Miss Margaret. Be with Natalia. Father, we're thankful for our time. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. If you're on Facebook, just scroll down and sign up for your slot on Monday for our day of prayer. If you're watching on YouTube, hopefully there'll be a link to that, maybe in the comment section of the video. Just click on that and sign up for your slot. If we can serve you in any way, please don't hesitate to let us know. And I hope that we will see you again very soon. God bless. Thank you.